they're all depressed. At that time was the #1 female depressed market in the country. You gotta fix chemistry first. If I could go back and tell my younger self what would I do differently, I would focus on that, what I call chemistry set in their blood. You can't do this when your insulin's that high. You just cannot win. Insulin will dictate what you are doing. If I hook you up to an IV and I keep alcohol dripping in to keep your intoxication level at 0.01, whatever, legally drunk, what do you think that feels like?
I don't know.
It's dysphoric. It's very uncomfortable. When you look at chronic alcoholism or chronic addiction of nearly anything, when you are in the throes of it and you are wanting that next drink, a chronic alcoholic wants for the drink. What do you think they feel when they take the drink?
Do they get that euphoria when they take it?
They feel relief. They feel, that's not joy. It's relief. We're no longer chasing dopamine. We are chasing an addiction that the brain has now practiced enough, done often enough that it's near steady state that they crave and they relief. And they crave and relief. And whether it's cutting or self-harm or find whatever addiction, shopping, gambling, they don't feel the euphoria anymore. They feel relief when they satisfy the craving. That change, that's difficult to undo.
Today, I'm joined by the incredible Dr. Annette Bosworth, known to many as Dr. Boz. She's an internal medicine physician who's helped thousands reverse chronic illness through healthy ketogenic living. Her work is grounded in science, but her approach is deeply human, focused on faith, family, and real healing. Her first book, Any Way You Can, told the story of how she's helped her 71-year young mother fight cancer using keto. That book has sold over 100,000 copies and inspired people around the world. Her follow-up, Keto Continuum, takes readers step by step through the protocol she uses in her clinic to help patients stay consistently keto. Dr. Boz, welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you here, Dr. Boz.
Thank you.
Dr. Annette Bosworth, but she goes by Dr. Boz. How did Dr. Boz come about?
You know, I think the first time I heard Boz as a shorten for Bosworth was when Brian Bosworth was a football player.
Yeah.
And he adopted the name, the Boz. My family disowned him when he pierced his ear. And it got much worse for them after that. But, that was the first time I ever heard that our last name shortened to that. So I'm sure that's where it came from, patients and friends. And then on a YouTube channel, you got to find something a little catchier. So that's where that kind of came out of that.
They call me Kiltsy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very catchy, and we all know you as Dr. Boz.
And if you've got a nickname, or a nickname is a sign of increased connection. And, so it's a good thing.
You found a community in the keto world, the carnivore world, the healthcare world. What inspired you to go into medicine and healthcare in the first place? And how did you sort of transition from pretty much standard practice to way non-standard?
Way non-standard, yeah. Okay, this story starts in 7th grade. I'm at my school, which is K through 12 in one building, 21 in my kindergarten class, 21 in my senior class.
Big.
Yep. The metropolis, and we are at a assembly, which is what they call an afternoon special right before you leave school, where 2 college kids were coming back and telling us about college. And I've never been to one of these before, so this was exciting. And I know those 2 people from church. They're the Adams kids, and they're there to tell us about college. And they talk about their college and how to pick a college, and maybe say the word sorority that I'd never heard before. And then at the end, they said, "Are there any questions?" And I raised my hand and said, "What's your job?" And they both kind of look at each other, and then they talk about their degree was in some sort of musical instrument, which fits the personality of that family. Like they're talented, but they didn't have a job. And it was the first time in my life that I said, "Oh no, you mean you can go all the way through this college thing and not have a job?" So I'm a farm kid. I ride my bike home, and our driveway is a dirt road that's a half mile long, and I got a magazine. I got the mail, and I'm reading the magazine. I can remember no hands, riding down this dirt road. And Time magazine had this story that said, if you get educated in this, what is your job satisfaction and the likelihood that you're going to have a job? And this is, of course, like 1984 or something. if you go to the top of that list, if you went to medical school, you were really likely to like your job, and you were very likely to have a job. So I thought, well, that's what I'm going to be. Nobody in my family's gone to college for 4 years. 2-year schools were the top. And I said to my dad, I'm going to be a doctor. He's like, whatever. It did not take me seriously at all. So a couple years go by, and I knew I just didn't want to be a hog farmer's wife. So I'm like, okay. And, Dad gave me some good advice. Go work at a nursing home. And if you can be the aide to the nurse, then you can probably enjoy the service work that comes as being a physician. I didn't know a doctor. I got all my immunizations from the county nurse. And so I didn't know what I was dreaming of, but it did fit with service work to people. Like, that was easy for me. I think you can't escape growing up in that small of a town, what your social obligation is to be part of a community, a genuine part of your community. And as a physician, that social obligation is broader, it is bigger. And so when I got into medical school, it was a dream come true, something that everybody said was against the odds, and it probably was. And then I had this really other difficult decision to make about what kind of doctor do you want to be? At which point I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We got another major life decision that I have no role model for, really. I mean, in med school, you get to sample a few doctors here and there, but it's not really like, are you divorced? I mean, what's the rest of your life like? So I'm at this point in your third year where you're going to try to match for a residency, or at least groom towards a residency, right? And I realized that the people who know how to answer the question that my parents were asking me were all internists. And so I'm like, okay, this probably suits what it is that I like, which is a deeper answer, super nerdy. To this day, my husband says, so poorly paid when you think for a living. Can't you do dermatology or something? But I liked it. And so then I did an internal medicine residency in Salt Lake City, Utah. Lived there for 10 years. All the kids were born there. And I loved, one of the attractions was they were the first to have a fully integrated electronic medical record system.
Oh, wow.
And so during that, I thought I was going to be an intensivist, an ICU doctor, shift work kind of. And then my first son was born in my third year of residency. And didn't matter if they offered me that fellowship. That was not going to be what I did. That whatever I could do with the education I had, let's do primary care, outpatient as an internist, and find the life where I can still be a mom and be available. Who's going to raise this baby if I'm that busy? So, God was helpful at all those steps. Like, I like what I do. I like the deeper answers. I really liked the analytical side of using an electronic medical record. Very calculated decisions happen in an ICU. I really liked that there was a right answer. Of course, it's a little meant to be tongue-in-cheek that there aren't humans come in your life and they're not calculatable answers. But I wanted them to be that. In fact, there was a study going on in my when I was trying to be an intensivist. They were looking at what is the biggest predictor of a patient survival in the ICU. Of course, at this point, you're like, antibiotics, ventilation protocol, washing your hands. Those were all like, but they're interviewing everybody. Anybody who touches the patient's existence on that ventilator got interviewed. And the study came out as I was, holding my baby. Take a guess what the biggest predictor was.
I'm going to say family.
Oh, it's so close. Were any of the decision makers, whether that's the physical therapist or the nurse or the physician, were they going through any life event? And the distraction translated to mortality for the patient. I'm like, oh my word, you cannot calculate that. I mean,
so the care providers were distracted based on other things happening in their life, which took them away from their job.
Yeah, that whatever the decisions were, I mean, they were looking at all kinds of things, but it was life events for the providers.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my word. I mean, at this point, I'm a third-year resident saying, well, that physician sleeps with that nurse, and this one, like they're messy human beings, just like in small town. You kind of know the pedigree of all of families, and not in a superficial way. I mean, I could draw out the family tree of all 21 students in my class, right? Who's been married? Who's divorced? Who's this? How many kids do they have? Where's the stepkid? Why does that kid's parents not his? It's really the auntie that left, whatever. There's messy.
Human existence.
Yeah, but it's real. And so I think you kind of see the same thing in an ICU team where you're like, you get to know them very well. This was when you had 36 hours on, 12 hours off, 12 hours on, 36 hours on, that mess. And so you just had so much time spent with these people, you couldn't help but get to know what's your backstory, what's your weakness. And when they were dealing with a kid in rehab or sleeping with the nurse, guess what? They didn't make very good decisions for the patient. But that's, no judge. I mean, that's their life. It's life. I wanted it to be more black and white than that. So
What interesting. So I'm a mechanic, and I wound up not getting into an OBGYN residency because I applied to 2 in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I took an internal medicine, 3 years in LA, and I'm a mechanic, but I found out what I really liked was the ICU, and I love the internal medicine. I love the fix it.
Yes.
And then I got a call towards the end of it, and they called me from an OBGYN residency in LA I wanted to go to, and they said, "Oh, we have an opening." And then I was torn, and so I wound up doing OBGYN.
But to have internal medicine and then OB-GYN, that's probably really good.
it was really great. I was always took care of the ICU patients. So tell me, I mean, obviously, now you go out to practice, and tell us a little bit about. So you went into...
Yeah, first steps out of practice were, like most residents, in the community you're trained is the easiest one to land the job that you really know what you're saying yes to, right?
Yeah.
So I took 4 days a week, always have Fridays off, clinic only, and the EMR, this was really important to me. Nobody was using EMRs in the clinic at this point. I'm like, paper charts?
What is that?
What? I'm not starting with paper charts. And they had the ability, they had the software, nobody did that. So I was like, I'm not seeing the first patient without that in my room. And the night before, I visit my office to kind of move a few things in, and I text the manager saying, there's no computers in my room. You can cancel tomorrow's patients. This was the deal. This is in the contract that I get EMR for the first patient. By the time 8 o'clock rolled around, there was computers. Okay, they listened. I mean, the point being, I knew that was a way to augment your thinking, especially in an ICU. You can't think of everything. I mean, the medicine, the analytics is so rich that you shouldn't be again, good training. You shouldn't be in charge of the 80% of the stuff that's calculatable and steady. You have to show up for the 20% nuance that really does take them from good to great. And that's the ethos in a good ICU.
You used the word augmented versus artificial.
Right.
What do you
so
think is the difference?
So a couple of things that I remember thinking in an ICU is you had all this data coming in from a ventilator, all the stuff, so all the wires that you measure the patient with, right? And in that system, again, a really nice system. This is Intermountain Healthcare, and was really integrated into what's the math about the patient, and then what's the art of the patient. And again, the math can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And then then you have to think. But that was fun. I mean, the hardest part is gathering the math, right? And so you take that skill set to the outpatient, and I'm a little bit competitive. So I take over this older gentleman who is a retiring internist, Mormon, in the city of Salt Lake City, and several of my partners were LDS, and that's fine. This is the culture that I'm in, but it was different. Like, I was a female, and I was not LDS, Christian, but not LDS, and so they sent me all their wives. But I also acquired the patient. When you're the newbie on a team, I was all the high need Medicare, Medicaid. And I didn't realize this. I'm new into outpatient practice. this company was giving you pay for performance. And although that means something now, back in 2001, especially in this facility, it meant the people who you have as you're the primary care for, what is their body mass index? What is their blood pressure? What is their hemoglobin A1C? So they were using metrics to measure you. And if you won, if you were the best in your region or whatever, it was a few more pennies you got paid per RVU. It was nothing about the money. It was definitely about the status. I mean, they really were able to tap into what makes physicians go. And so I get to the end of my first quarter and really I'm just surviving. Like that computer was plugged in, but it was not hooked up to an EMR, dang it. So there was just a lot of bloody knuckles that first season. And in the meantime, I'm running an ER 100 miles away from there in Fillmore, Utah, which starts on Friday night, ends on Sunday night. And I love it because that's the only place I'm getting to use those ICU skills that I think are great. I mean, I think that's fun. And so once a month I'd do that. And then I would just, I poured into making that computer work for me like it did in the ICU. And those dividends played off where I shouldn't have to think of these things when I first see the patient. The computer should be helping me. Now I get to focus on the part that, how do I change that behavior? So the first report comes out at the quarter and I am the worst. So I get this report. I don't even know what it is really, but it's me compared to all the other people like me. And I'm at the bottom. I'm the worst hemoglobin A1C. I'm the worst blood pressure. I'm the worst BMI. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I got a goal. And so
Good place to start.
Amen. So it didn't take long before I said, I can't seem to get I can't get the needle to move because they're all depressed.
Yeah.
Mental health was this huge part of, I know the blood sugar should be important to me, but when you don't give a hoot about doing your day, the last thing you're going to care about is your A1C. So I started screening everybody for depression. Just said, you're going to do their blood pressure, you're going to weigh them, you're going to take their blood, you're going to make them PHQ-9. So we started screening them for depression. And as offensive as that was in 2001, it became standard practice. Here's the lines you tell the patient, I need this done. Please fill it out. You're going to fill it out every time. I'm trying to monitor how you're thinking. And when you have I didn't know that Salt Lake City, Utah at that time was the #1 female depressed market in the country. And most of my practice was females.
Wow.
And so that became this other part where you're like, I would love to be great at the A1C, but I'm never going to be great at that if we ignore their mental health. And that was novel at that stage. But coming to it honestly of, okay, let's help with that. So by, I think, the 4th of those reports, I'm in the top 3rd. By the 6th of those reports, I'm in the top 3. Meaning when you pay attention to that mental health, as well as then saying, okay, let's get you feeling better.
What's the driving force, do you think, in our mental health problems back then and today?
Yeah. Gosh, I have a much better answer today than I did then. I mean, you cannot escape that. First of all, in my career, in the last 30 years, the explosion of how we see the brain, how we understand the brain, what a great privilege to get to witness that in patients and in medicine. And then to try and keep up with what do the experts think is the cause of this improvement or this setback, and then what's the truth? I think you couple that with my intense desire to know the community, the person in a way that's a little broader, that fits with being from a town of 800 people. Like, oh, give me some more story. Give me some more story. Why do you behave this way? And then, so to take what the science has shown us, what the imaging has shown us, and then don't dissociate that you are a mind, body, and spirit, that you should never silo into different sections of medicine. It should be this holistic approach. You got to fix chemistry first. If I could go back and tell my younger self what would I do differently, I would focus on that what I call chemistry set in their blood. Like, you can't do this when your insulin's that high. You just cannot win. Insulin will dictate what you are doing, and it is such a massive problem of everybody lives with a high insulin starting at age 12. I mean, And what does that do? It decreases your sex hormones. It changes the way those neurons divide. You cannot mature a brain. You cannot sleep well. That chronic inflammation that is subtle, and healthy people, you're not going to notice it till it's been there for 10 years.
Wow.
And so step one is that has to be in the reversal bucket. You cannot be making that many cytokines a day and think that you can make a brain work better. So then step two is you do have to address your demons. If you've got a history of being hurt or a setback or a neglect, it's touchy-feely. I would much rather have an intubated patient. I mean, it was one of those moments where I'm like, it's November. I took the job in June, and I come home to my husband and said, what I wouldn't do for an intubated one. Because the stories are long. They don't fit in 15 minutes, and I can't fix it until I understand this person better, right? So I would tell myself to fix chemistry first. I would tell myself to have a thorough history. And honestly, the best histories don't come from a person to a person. I mean, that sounds lovely, but that's like, Laura Ingalls Wilder time. What they come from is give them a screen, asking them questions. They're so much more truthful with a screen than they would be with me. And once you have a good history, let me enrich that. Let me be the human that should step in and care for you. But you can't skip that. You cannot skip that. Their demons are going to haunt them. And so chemistry, understand trauma. I don't think you can fix mental health problems without really understanding what happened to you that you'd behave that way. And and then there's some fun tools that I can add.
Yeah.
But I'm the last of that.
Do you think that the fixing the chemistry helps us better fix the trauma?
Yeah. So there's a study that I don't think it's published yet. I had one of my good friends send it to me. And if it's published, it's in the last week, identifying that. So we have these buckets in psychiatry that are all based on symptoms and the way the patient answers. They're not based on imagery. So there's this perception, if you're in the muck of how do brains not work right, that we put all these in this bucket, but they're not all the same. And if you look at major depressive disorder, have you ever met somebody who got help through ketamine or S-ketamine?
No.
That when it works, they're a zealot. Like, why didn't somebody do this earlier? And so I've always wondered, like, how could I sort for that? Get you to the ketamine, S-ketamine people. How could I find the ones that do that? What this paper is talking about is if you've had a childhood trauma, and that word doesn't just mean you saw an explosion, you were in a fire, you were in a car accident. It means you got neglect. When somebody was supposed to protect you, they didn't. Even malnourishment could be part of that. That trauma, not necessarily called PTSD. PTSD is very specific type of trauma.
To one event, some massive event.
Right.
Okay.
And so if you're in the real human messy part of that, you'd say, okay, so that word trauma means a lot. It means something to me that it doesn't often fit in the diagnosis book, but they have trauma. And if you can get them to address that, dang, things get better. And there's something about the glutamate activation that S-ketamine works with that just it's remarkable. They're better. Now, there's lots of life stuff you have to put in there. But again, what tools can we use to say either they stay stuck, they go back to drinking, drug and sex and whatever, they never get healthy until we rewire a couple things that are clearly broken. So that's an answer to the chemistry is still in this advent of we do have some really great tools. I don't think we understand how they work as well as I wish they did. And I wish you could formulate, if their history has this, then that is going to be how the fastest way to help them. Don't make them fail 15 treatment plans for their major depressive disorder that keeps coming back time and time again. I mean, I'd put them all on a ketogenic diet because even if you can heal with S-ketamine, they don't stay there if they keep making that many cytokines. So to me, when I look at mental health issues that oscillate through their life, they come and go, they just never seem to vanish. I would, again, tell my younger self, get them on a ketogenic diet, Nothing else matters until that first step decreases the amount of, goo they're making inside their brain. Now, if I add esketamine, or if I do a TMS, if you do ECT therapy, it sticks and they don't come back for repeat customers. They really do get better. And there's a lot of people that believe, once that brain's depressed, you can't get it better. I'm like, that's not true.
So is the brain, like the heart, the liver, or every other organ system in our body, damaged and dysfunctional based on a diet which is damaging, which has included alcohol and drugs and tobacco for so many people, but it also includes sodas and pasta, pizza, bread, and an unhealthy diet. And tell us a little bit about how you sort of moved into the keto world.
Right.
And I also want to talk a little bit about your addiction medical experience and how sort of the keto and maybe addiction medicine got you to where you're at.
Well, you can see where I'm going at the beginning part of my career where I'm like, okay, I really liked the, shock trauma, right? This is advanced ICU where all these protocols to how do you get the brain to survive this moment? And then it was somebody else's problem. So going into outpatient, I'm like, well, I would like to do that. I would like to be the problem solver after the ICU, but it's not nearly as calculated. It's messy, and these patients go out in the wild. They don't stay in your ICU, and they don't follow your orders. And so you look at what changes, what things were necessary to repair. And I'm telling you, if you start recruiting that you take care of broken brains, my first audience of people, I was in a study studying TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So like an MRI machine that has that magnetic sound when you're in the MRI, that really loud sound of magnet, they stimulate usually the left side of the brain, and they can awaken a neuron that's dormant or sleepy. And so the first one of the studies,
it's like electrical shock to re-stimulate the heart in a sense.
It is 3,000 stimulus on the left side of their prefrontal cortex for over the course of 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a study that was being done. I didn't do the TMS. I was just outpatient saying, you're blinded. I don't know if they're actually zapping your head or if you're just getting zapped on the head with a rubber band or whatever. But some Parkinson's patients just impressed me where they were. You look at a masked faces and you see them again and again. You look at that microphone, you look at the things, they can't control that. And then it's gone. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Now, it did not get FDA approval for, TMS didn't get FDA approval for Parkinson's, but that was my first damaged brain. Like, oh, I like this. This makes my heart go, I enjoy this. And so to watch now in a network of people saying, send me people with a broken brain, Parkinson's, internal medicine, what happened, the dominoes after that when you're taking care of a chronic debilitating disease of Parkinson's is eventually they send you addicts. What's the most common broken brain is going to be addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't help it. I can remember in Salt Lake City, there's a small network of people. It's a very LDS interconnected. You got a judge and a doctor that are brothers. And the judge was in charge of one of the first drug courts. And so the drug Vivitrol had just come out, and this doctor and judge make a pact that it was all legal, but it sounds like there's, but they both wanted to heal these brains from addiction. So he ordered the drug Vivitrol to go into these patients, and I was the internist. And I'm like, I've never heard of that drug. I don't know what that is. And it was, brand new on the market. And so it's a drug that blocks the opiate receptor that gives you euphoria. Mm. And so you look at this addiction process saying, if you can block that, well, what happens? And then how the heck does this opiate receptor have anything to do with booze? It was FDA approved for alcoholism. Anyway, long story short, if you look at why they were partnering to say, can you get a brain that's repeatedly doing addiction to behave differently because of the chemistry? The answer is yes. Absolutely you can. Can you get it to stay there? Not without working on these other messy things like, what are your social relationships like? What's your support system like? how often are you actually still going to the bar, even if you're not drinking? Like, what's your temptation like? And, you know, in Utah, it's very socially shaming to have a DUI or to use alcohol inappropriately. So you look at all of those social pressures of change, and I was fascinated by when a brain is in a habit that there was something a prescription pill could do to change the habit. I think that's where my first steps towards addiction started, where yes, Parkinson's, I mean, I am 25 years into practice, and it is Dr. Boz 0, Parkinson's 3,500, like whatever it is, I don't know, like a lot of people that still die because of Parkinson's. It is a terrible disease. And although that intervention was very helpful, again, I wish I would have done a few things to make it even more helpful, to be more sustainable. But addiction, you get to win some. And so I think, of course, that feels good, right? As a selfishly, like, they're better.
Wow.
And I can remember, years later, having an addiction clinic, having, in-house, how do you do medical assisted treatment? How do you use the medicines? How do you have the counseling folks in-house? How do you, how do you help people with addiction, finding those wins every once in a while? And so you get up to the 5-year point and say, well, which of my patients are sober at 5 years? This big marker in addiction medicine. And it's terribly low for no matter who you are, but when you go back and interview, they're sober at 5 years. Take a guess what the biggest predictor of sobriety at 5 years was.
I'm going to say community.
Totally. Did they attend the support groups?
Yeah.
Did they go to AA or, celebrate recovery, or just, stitch and bitch? Did they have a community of people who were also
I love it.
suffering with what they're suffering with, and did they learn from one another? And I mean, I was, again, kind of almost as disappointed as that survey in the ICU, like, what? It's not from my Vivitrol shot? It's not from me? But it matched, because once you got their brain to not do that craving, that, I mean, again, you look at a brain that's, whether it's carbs or alcohol or opiate, sex, drugs, rock and roll, find something. And when they first reach for it, they feel good. They have this nice burst of dopamine. They feel good. This is why they like it. And then they, go on with their life and they do it again and they feel it again. But
hey, if you're eating animal-based, you know how hard it is to find something real when you're on the go. That's why I like the Carnivore Bar. It's made with just meat, fat, salt, and sometimes a little honey. No seed oils, no sugar, no preservatives. It's shelf-stable, travel-ready, and packs 400 calories of real nourishment. Think of it like modern-day pemmican, a survival food, reimagined with high-quality, regeneratively raised beef. Whether you're flying, hiking, road tripping, or just busy between meals, this bar helps you stay fueled until your next steak. It's simple, it's real, and it actually supports how humans are meant to eat. Meet my food.
Let's talk about booze. If it's alcohol, if I hook you up to an IV and I keep alcohol dripping in to keep your intoxication level at, 0.01, whatever, legally drunk, what do you think that feels like?
I don't know.
It's dysphoric. It's very uncomfortable. They do not like it.
It's not joyful.
It's not. When you steady state that, it doesn't burst and valley. That little nucleus accumbens is saying, man, we'll tap out. That's not what we do. They get no joy. When you look at chronic alcoholism or chronic addiction of nearly anything, when you are in the throes of it and you are wanting that next drink, a chronic alcoholic wants for the drink. What do you think they feel when they take the drink?
Do they get that euphoria when they take it?
No. They feel relief. They feel, okay. That's not joy. It's relief. And so you watch that behavior of, we're no longer chasing dopamine. We are chasing an addiction that the brain has now practiced enough done often enough that it's near steady state, that they crave and they relief, and they crave and relief. And whether it's cutting or self-harm or sex, drugs, rock and roll, find whatever addiction, shopping, gambling, they don't feel the euphoria anymore. They feel relief when they satisfy the craving. And that change is that's difficult to undo. So the ones that get to the 5-year point where they were able to get rid of that craving, they were able to change that habit, and 5 years out, they're still not doing it. That is remarkable. They got to have community. They have to. I mean, I can do all this manipulation of their brain, but I can't do it without a community.
The stitch and bitch.
Yes.
Is there something about community and connections that give us relief also?
Yeah.
In our I mean, in some way, there's addictions built into our body, but they're not harmful. They're good, right? So our brain knows what to do to get us doing something.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, because you mentioned service.
Yeah. So when you look at where addictions come from, I mean, this is my theory. It can, fight me against it. When that brain was going from pre-puberty to puberty, super rapid growth. If a coping skill is inappropriately relieving, like they find alcohol and they're the most difficult alcoholic is when they start drinking in that peripubertal. If they find cutting and it's relief, they find the joy. If they find the addiction during that time, what's supposed to happen in that brain is you are supposed to find dopamine from relationships, from accomplishments, from doing hard things, from having service in your life, storytelling, and there's all kinds of threads the brain was supposed to develop to give you that sense of, that feels so good. Now, it's never as bountiful as a shot of tequila when you're 12, or maybe that's not, alcohol is really a nice bam, it gives you a heck of a punch the first time. But if you don't develop those other threads, you will relapse. So, what is community doing in those moments is there has to be a real connection there. If you go to the AA meeting and you just sit there in the final row and you leave before ever saying anything, you just checked off a box. There's not a relationship there. If we can say, find somebody that you connect with that is doing this, struggling like you. That's where those first relationships begin to, again, reprogram like you would a 12-year-old brain. This is how, so you'll see if you've ever been to a recovery meeting, they put boys on one side and girls on the other, because you have to have development of that same sex relationship before you can find the opposite sex relationship advanced. So that's where they're starting, is 12-year-olds.
And there's so much dysfunction in our environments or lifestyles today. We don't live in villages.
Right.
We are isolated, and we're consuming a diet that equally damages our brain.
Right.
And maybe you could touch upon keto, and you wrote a book called
Any Way You Can.
Any Way You Can.
And then Keto Continuum.
Keto Continuum. And maybe you can bridge them together a little bit, and why keto is critical. And it's the science part of your methodology, I suspect, that ketosis is an important part of our healing.
Yeah, so the first time I heard about a ketogenic diet being helpful, it was Tim Ferriss talking to Dom D'Agostino on a podcast, and they were talking about brain injuries, which is how I came across my feed. How do you repair brain injuries? And Navy SEALs and NASA, and Dom does this research in a ketogenic diet. And I mean, Tim Ferriss has been on this lifelong journey of his own mental health, but he's got some brain injuries that he'd had. He was very curious about that. So that podcast where I'm having to stop and look up words. What do you mean ketosis? What do you mean meaning ketoacidosis? And I'm doing all the things. And I like, what? And I think it was like 2012 or 13. It was before the wave. But I was like, what?
Yeah.
And you hear them doing all these protocols that I'm doing to repair brains, TMS and community and, sleep and all the things that are required. Here's the steps. If you want to heal a brain, you got to get the cytokines out. You got to do all this. But they're getting what would take me like at least 18 months. They were getting done in 6 months. It would take me like 4 to 5 years. They're getting done in 18 months. Like, what? And as I opened up and said, all right, I'm reading about this and, secretly, like, does anybody else know about this? Am I the only one that missed this? And nobody knew what I was talking about. And so I'm like, all right, it's not a strange place for me to be outside the pack thinking differently, but okay, this sounds like science. Like, shouldn't we all have known this? So this is happening and I am just failing. So then I say, well, I'm going to try to do this diet before I even tell somebody about it. And at the time I've got my urine ketone strips and I cannot make a ketone to save my life. And I've probably got, 30, 50 pounds that I shouldn't have on my body, but I'm fine compared to my community. Okay. And so that's Memorial Day. And on Memorial Day, there's a ruck around our city where you do a hike in honor of fallen soldiers. So my kids are going to go with you. We're going to hike 22 miles. And I don't eat from like noon on the previous day. And I'm going to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to do this 22-mile hike. And I thought, if I don't pee a ketone by the end of this hike, it doesn't exist. But sure enough, I was in ketosis at the end of that and thought, are you telling me it takes 22 miles of hiking for me to make a ketone? And so then I'm like, all right, I'm not eating a single carb. How long will this last? And it probably lasted a week before something reset and my ketones are gone. I'm like, oh, strips must be bad. I couldn't figure it out. Anyway, I'm struggling with this. And then I got irritated enough that I closed my clinic for 3 days to go to the library. And if you're a business owner, you should not do
No.
payroll still comes. It's a very bad idea. But I couldn't find the space to answer this question that was keeping me awake and there was nobody else talking about it. So here I am doing all this and I come across a few things like MD Anderson had this protocol about using a ketogenic diet in cancer patients. And I just read the headline abstract, toss it aside, go to the next one. And a few weeks later, my mom, who'd had a cancer for over 10 years at this point, and she had the best care that Western medicine could offer because I did it. I went to every appointment. I really chaperoned what was happening. And she was, you do not need a doctorate to know she's gray, looks 100 years old, has big lymph nodes coming out her neck, and she's got cancer back.
Wow.
And it's CLL, so it's known to slow grow and then peak and slow grow and peak. When it's peaking, you give them the chemo. And the last time I did this, she made every parcel of clothing until I was in like the 6th grade. And the last time we gave her chemo, she didn't know what a sewing machine was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took us 6 months to get that back. And I was like, God, that's so dangerous. What if I wouldn't have been there helping her say, no, Mom, this is and she did get back, but it was always muted. Like it's not the joy, like the mental health isn't right. Like something's wrong. This is Mary Poppins.
Same person isn't back.
Yeah, like, wow. And so then we come out of there. My friend is the oncologist. We come out of the room and she goes, she tells them, I'm not doing chemo again. I will die. And she has a 6-month life expectancy if she does nothing. And she's 71. And you start to do the thought, well, she's had this great life. What kind of life has she had in the last few years? And then she asks me the question that patients have been asking me for the better part of, 15 years at that point, that I sometimes lie to them about. They say, Doc, what would you do? And if I'm having a good day, if I'm rested and I'm leaning in and I'm not behind schedule and nobody's yelling at me for whatever else I didn't get done that moment, I'll tell them the truth. But there's plenty of times I just said, this is what the guidelines are and that's what I do. Because it's the right answer.
Yeah.
but I'm not going to do that to my mom. What would you do if it was you? And I can remember exactly in the hospital where we're standing. She's got the pink slip in her hand to walk down the hallway to get chemotherapy. I said, Mom, do you trust me? And she cries, and I cry. She's like, I trust you with my whole life. I said, I would walk out that door, let me drive you to the farm, and I'm going to teach you what a ketone is. And we're going to do a ketogenic diet for 6 weeks and not tell your doctor that we're not getting chemo. Because it's rural South Dakota, so he's in the Mecca, and we have to go to this rural thing and get the chemo, and it's still 40 minutes from the farm, but we're 100 miles from him. So this coordination gets messy. And if you don't do what you're supposed to, you can easily fall through the cracks and nobody's going to call you. Like, just head down.
Home.
Yeah, let's go home. Left my car in the parking lot, drove to the farm, cleaned out all those damn carbs that are like bottles of canned peaches from 1972. Yes, Mom, I know that was good salsa, but it's full of sugar. No, you cannot have it in the house. Get it out of here. Yes, I know you have a beehive behind you. It's still sugar. And we did the messiest version of a ketogenic diet, meaning it was messy, but she was being ketones.
Wow.
Neither of us lost any weight. But 6 weeks later, it's before like screen sharing and messaging. It's just a phone, and so we would both post on Facebook what our glucose and ketones were. So we were accountable to one another, and I didn't have a million people following me at the time, so there would be days where it would be less, but we were doing it together. So we kind of did that little accountability, and she calls me. So out of the 52 weeks in the past year, she has a cancer of white blood cells. She's been on antibiotics 50 out of 52 weeks because they're defective. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They swim, they take a left turn at Albuquerque when they were supposed to turn right. I mean, they just do not work right. 1 in 5,000 of them are working at the time of this, right? So she's always on antibiotics, and she always sounds down. And about a week later, I thought I heard a difference in her, but I thought, placebo, do I want it? And then I'm busy, right? So the next week goes by, and I'm like, she has not asked for the prescription for antibiotics. And I think maybe she got a supply at home or whatever, right? But her voice is different. I know her voice is different. And I don't get to see her for these 6 weeks, but I get to hear her. And so we walk back into the oncologist, and I see her walk into the hospital, and I don't recognize her. I mean, she just looks so young. She hasn't lost a pound, but she does not look gray. And, if we would have given her chemo, the best we could have hoped for was a 30% reduction in those white blood cells, those defective white blood cells. I don't know what this is going to say. And so we go in, we get the blood drawn, and this is like how the protocol, and then you sit there and wait, and then you go for your turn to see the doctor, and it's taking a long time. And they come back and they draw her blood again. And of course, I'm a little nervous, but the longer we wait, the more nervous I get. In about 2 minutes, I can hear the doctor out there looking for the records of the chemotherapy report that should have been done that we skipped. And then I get really nervous and say, Mom, if he asks any questions, just shut up and look at me. Don't say anything. So it makes her really nervous. And she goes, okay. And I said, I don't know how to explain what's happening, so I might not answer either.
Don't know.
Right. I didn't know. I couldn't explain it. I'm like, so here comes this report. And she has a 70% reduction in her numbers from a really messy ketogenic diet, not a great ketogenic diet. And that was like beyond, that was not in any of my textbooks. You can't fix this with that. The problems that you're having, there's 7 of them I can see: the mental health, the concentration, your sleep, the infections, the gray skin, which doesn't have a diagnosis, but something ain't right. I mean, all of that life was like, oh, by the way, there's CLL at the top of the list, right? So the whole milieu of brokenness, like, well, I might not know how to answer it, but I do know that we're doing something right. And at this time, I have little sticky notes on my mirror because she can't think as well. She, ran the county as the county auditor for years and has a really smart brain. I mean, she is a wonderful woman. But to ask her to sit down and read a scientific paper or something, that's not. So I'm giving her little lessons. Here's the next step. And these sticky notes, my husband keeps saying, you should write a book about that. You should write a book about that. And I'm like, I don't do that. That's not me. And so the book came when I lost a bet to my husband. And I took those sticky notes and wrote the story behind where they came from. And honestly, her story has, when people ask me what is any way you can about it, so it's a love story between a mother and a daughter. It's like 70% story and about 30% science, but it's just enough for you to say, you see, it's not just a cancer that this was helping. This is a mitochondria that was very broken, that got better in like 6 places, and her brain worked better, and her immune system worked better, and her heart worked better, and her blood pressure went down. And I was trying to do all those things with my pills. To my favorite person here, like, what if I did this better? And as the book became popular, the people coming to my clinic became a tsunami of like, I want you to do what you did to her. And I'm like, you get that no insurance company pays me for this. There's no code to teach you how to eat. Even to bill for like putting you into ketosis is an ICU diagnosis, and you're doing something wrong.
Right, something's wrong with you, not right with you.
And so the second book was, so I actually had a middle school mother. I'm in line to pick up my middle schooler, and it's South Dakota, so you've got frozen windows and frozen cars, and this woman pushes this any way you can into my windshield and said, "Did you write this book?" And I'm like, oh my God, I think I know you. And she's yelling at me through the car. I said, well, the window's frozen. Get in. It's cold out there. So we're sitting in line waiting for our kids to be picked up. And she's like, she's got a really thick accent. I just got out of hospital and I was there for colon cancer. Do you know what they fed me after colon cancer removal? Pudding. And she's all upset. I need you to be my doctor. I need you to be my doctor. And I'm like, my staff will kill me. They will boycott. I cannot take on one more patient that insurance isn't going to pay us for.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to be a teacher. You need to teach this diet. And have you ever, when somebody challenges you with something that God designed you to do? I mean, I had no in my brain. This is what I should say is no. And I tried to say the word no, but it did not come out of I said, okay, I'll do that. I said, come on Friday, 8:00. I'll see you there. And we started a support group that was just teaching the ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
And there was cold, folding chairs in the basement of my office that we just met for a little chat. And that became the support group that I've done since 2015, first in Sioux Falls and then here in Tampa. And because you don't need to be a doctor to teach the ketogenic diet. It doesn't hurt for a doctor to help you do the ketogenic diet and say, there's a lot more to the science behind it, but here's the rules. And you don't need to fly across the country or drive to South Dakota to come see me to do it. Just read this. So the Any Way You Can was me kind of coming of age that you can help with that. But Keto Continuum is really a man who never was my patient, but was always at the support group. And and his lessons of how do you reverse those problems with doing a medical or a medical grade ketogenic diet.
Science or stories?
Stories win every time.
And because ultimately the Bible is really
stories, yes.
who and what we are, and probably take us far further than what we have gained in our scientific endeavors.
Oh.
And you in medicine, me in medicine, many others in medicine, and so many people are riding on the hopes that science is going to save us.
Right.
And
it's real.
It's the stories, and you're a marvelous storyteller, and you help draw us in to the story.
Amen. Yeah.
And maybe you could touch a little bit, service, stories, and faith. And how has faith also honed your life journey of helping heal those that are suffering?
Oh, I just really appreciate the recognition that is a huge part of the foundation of how do you step outside of medicine traditionally when, again, I'm the orphan in this. There's not like I have a dynasty of hog farmers behind me, not of physicians. And so when you step outside the tradition, you got to look around. Is there anybody else doing this with me is what you're going to ask for, right? And so when the science stops answering the questions and you're doing this, if you don't have that trust and comfort that I'm doing this and I have one person I'm answering to, and when I'm take away all the stress and the busyness, did I honor that? That part of my story, I think, is to me the most important part of it. Like, yes, the ketogenic diet really helped my mom, and I could explain the science, but I grew up in the church. My mother was the superintendent for the Sunday school and led all the songs, and I was her helper at age 6. All the way through this small town journey of being a Christian and going to church and having the rules, right? And I think of that as, sure, that was my genetic, footprint of where I was born and who I was born to. But then there's a tipping point where your faith gets tested, and you got to figure out, what is it you do believe? And I don't think you can do that without trials of, trying to steward your life on your own and say, this is my plan and it's going to work, and then it doesn't. You say, was I really listening to what I was called to do? And that story of attempts and failures and trust in your faith, it is why the Bible is the book that's been around the longest, sold the most. Those stories are, oh yeah, you'll relate to that. And so, I've had acts of service since the day I was born. Like, I don't think you can be in a small town as the daughter of my mother, where if you don't help with the parade, it didn't happen. If you don't help with the Sunday school, it doesn't happen. There's only 800 of us, okay? You got to show up and do things. But that social responsibility was like ingrained in the character of our family. And you don't always get paid for the things you do. That's not what this is for. There should be joy in what you're doing. And so I really give credit to my parents having that in their, in their examples. And then I couldn't have picked a better husband that has a way better stability in trusting what God's asked you to do and not listening to the world around you than I ever did. And there's been seasons where it was a test. It was a very big test. It didn't look pretty. It was when you know you're called to do something and you do it, even if you don't get rewards on this side of heaven, that step to the next journey, to the next step is that's your responsibility as a Christian. And, I left there. I got bloody knuckles inside medical establishments for a while. First it was, being the first one with an EMR. Then it was learning that I have a pretty assertive personality and that you can look at that positively or negatively. And then getting recruited back to South Dakota, my home state, for being flown to the White House and doing all these sexy things as a physician. You must be good. And then I come back to my home state, and that is not what they wanted. They really wanted you to be a rule follower, part of the herd, and that did not work out. I was not welcome there. And so when I finally realized I need to not be in a corporate system, it's really not working out for me. That's very lonesome. It does not make a lot of money. And I was pretty broken when I left that corporate. I'd never failed at anything. And when they asked me, they didn't fire me. They did something much worse. They labeled me disruptive. And then said, you can move away. I'm like, it's South Dakota. Oh, where am I going to move to? There's one city. Because you had to be 20 miles or something away from any billboard, any advertisement. Like, that puts me in Missouri or something like that. Your advertisements are everywhere. And so the shiny shoes left the room and said, well, you can see the poor and you can see the homeless for 2 years. And that was 2010 when the earthquake in Haiti happened, and my husband signed us up to go volunteer in Haiti.
Wow.
I couldn't have told you where Haiti was.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't agree to this, but when he said yes, I just didn't have the energy to fight. And when I got off the plane and you could smell the death everywhere, and they take you to this tent city where there's so much need. And then you realize, oh, I have some skills here that I could use. And God did put me there for a reason. And there was something very, like, what was in my heart, in my soul, of failing at medicine, really, is what it felt like. I really tried hard, but it did not. Every time I tried to change something, it was awful.
Wow.
And now you're labeled disruptive and you're kicked out of medicine, and nobody will talk to you, and nobody will hire you at the little clinic that's 2 hours commute from where you're living. No, nobody. And then you land in a place where everything's crumbled and you can smell death everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, Chad, that's what it feels like inside my mind.
Wow.
And I think we went back to Haiti over 30 times over the next 3 years.
God bless you.
And it was the place where you go to serve and you don't think about the Western world. It resurrected me. It helped me. And it's where my faith went from, that groomed child that grew up in the church, and maybe it had challenges that I thought were challenges. They were nothing like the challenges that started in 2010 and really continued for years to come, that I don't wish away, but it was a lot.
It's a gift we don't always understand.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't wish it away. I became such a better person out of that story. Yeah. I mean, there's 12 felonies and 24 years sentenced to prison in that story. And yet my medical license was never taken away, and I got through that. It does not make sense. There's no 1 year's legal bills, $1.3 million in legal fees. What? Anyway.
He loves you.
Amen. Yeah.
That's why I always say he loves you. And he loves me. And he loves all of us. And nothing good comes out of easy.
Amen. For real.
It's meant to be hard.
It's meant to be hard.
Just to wrap it up, because this has been really a remarkable time spent with you, Dr. Boz. I've truly enjoyed it. Advice for those that are considering medicine as a profession, as a job. What is it that the young people, or any age going into healthcare, can do to help make a change?
Wow, that is such a huge part. Because to become a physician is so many years of commitment, and the sacrifice that you have to say yes to with, for women, those reproductive years, good luck trying to have a baby during that. And then if you do, what the price you pay in medicine when that happens. And then how do you, I am so thankful that we weren't supposed to get pregnant my third year of residency, but praise Jesus, we did. I just thought it would take much longer than that, honey. And to know that I didn't sacrifice a family through that, and I do have mentorship in med students and interns and residents who are all making it their way.
Yeah.
So I've said things like, don't go into medicine. Like my kids, I'm like, don't go into medicine. This is highly regulated. You can't hardly burp without people telling you did something wrong. But the truth is, there are enough people that are finding their journey out of the corporate world that oh, I hope that it continues. I mean, I'm staying here. And the impact that you have when you really understand it. I mean, the reason that takes so long is it is a lot of information to learn as a physician. But what I hope happens before they ever enter that first day of med school is they have that authentic connection to a community that they want to serve. And when I look at the folks who've gone through and really done great in the last 10 years, they know the audience that they're supposed to serve. And the science is this extra part that they got to do a good job at, or you can't get in or get through. But they don't lose that connection to their community.
A life of service.
Amen. Yeah.
I think that's what you said, and your direction in life. And I think that we all can learn from that, and having faith in God. And He always gives us the strength to handle what He gives us every single day.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Dr. Boss, for being here, taking the time to share your inspirational words and experience in life and your story, which is like remarkable. So thank you very, very, very much.
Well, thank you. And I am here to be part of it. So thanks for including me. And I look forward to the next 10 years that we can make a difference.
Oh, that's what we're all here to do. And each of us is learning together. And you just got to look up Dr. Boz. And she's remarkable. And she's a teacher. And you're the student. And then you be the teacher. And there are plenty of students that you're on the way to teaching them to be the teachers.
Amen. That's
Amen.
totally it.
So
Yep.
God bless. Thank you.